People want to purchase Canadian products, eh? I'm serious about what I said before. I'm making an animation production company here. My intention is to make animations for kids and adults, and a few video games while I'm at it. Might as well start with the animations meant for kids and family viewing. I'm not revealing the title of this feature film until it's in theaters. For now, I'm calling it BG. This is a kids' feature film about two little girls. One is Olive Silverstein. The other is Edwina McIntyre. Olive and Edwina compete against each other to find out who is the smartest. Think of the song, Anything You Can Do, except it's two nerdy little girls singing it at each other. Both Olive and Edwina have a mummy and a daddy. Olive has an older sister. Edwina has an older brother. Mr. Silverstein and Mr. McIntyre are the type of men who prefer to compete rather than be twins. This includes each of them encouraging his daughter to be smarter than the other father's daughter. The older siblings are not used in the competition because they are friends. Like typical older siblings, they enjoy teasing Olive and Edwina. Mrs. Silverstein and Mrs. McIntyre are friends too. Olive and Edwina become witnesses to a terrible crime. The perpetrator of the crime discovered that he was discovered, and he thinks threatening Olive and Edwina into silence is enough to make sure he doesn't get into trouble. It works on Olive. She's terrified. She's not going to say a word. Edwina refuses to stay silent. The perpetrator committed a terrible crime. He should do the time. The loved ones of the victims deserve answers. Olive tells Edwina they can't do anything because what if the perpetrator comes after their loved ones? Their dads? Their moms? Their older siblings? Will Olive successfully keep Edwina silent so both of their families can be safe? Will Edwina knock some sense into Olive that it's their civic duty to help the victims' loved ones? The answers will be in theaters. Berta Trail is a kids' animated series. Berta Trail sounds familiar, eh? Because it's inspired by Alberta. This is a Western story. However, the cowboys do not ride horses. They ride dinosaurs instead. Imagine cowboys riding Albertosaurus, wrangling herds of Edmontonias over the foothills. Berta Trail is about three Western tropes: the retired gunfighter, the kid trope, and the young gun, combined with three archaic storytelling tropes: the old crone, the maiden, and the child. The retired gunfighter is Xena Ray. She was quite the gunslinger in her youth, but the story starts when she's an old crone. She's there with her husband. Both woke up in the morning. A few minutes later, Xena Ray notices her husband opened his eyes for the last time. Her husband dies, which means she's alone. But for how long? Instead of waiting for her time to die, Xena Ray comes out of retirement, becomes a gunslinger again, and aspires to die on the field of battle. What will finally do her in? Getting eaten by dinosaurs? Getting shot by a faster gunslinger? A severe allergic reaction to the cottonwood tree seeding? Choking on a dinosaur steak in a saloon? The second character is Chevy the Kid. The kid trope is about someone growing up too soon, too fast. When Chevy was a wee lass, her parents and her siblings were killed. Carnivore dinosaurs were in the house and ate her family. Somehow Chevy survived. In shock, she walked all the way to another family's house. Chevy and her family did not know this family. The family that Chevy escaped to assumed that Chevy was abandoned. The parents of the family adopted her and raised her well. Now an adult, Chevy decides to venture forth to find out what happened to her childhood household. How did those dinosaurs get into her parents' house? Was it an accident? Was it her parents' mistake? Was it someone else's mistake? Or did someone want to kill Chevy's family and make it look like an accident? Chevy the Kid has all these questions, and she goes forth to meet the heroic challenge of finding the answers. The third protagonist is the child, Daisy Ace. Daisy Ace is a poor, naive child. She romanticizes the cowboy life. Romanticizing doesn't mean love story. In this case, it means Daisy Ace thinks that the cowboy life is more exciting and fun than it really is. Daisy Ace's parents know of her Wrangler dream, and they are worried for her. She's likely to skip school, sneak over to a ranch, and get eaten! Or mangled by one of the Albertosaurus noble steeds. When she's an adult, she could be a Wrangler, but right now she's still a kid. Daisy Ace's uncle is a Wrangler, and he has an idea. He tells his sister and her husband that he'll take Daisy Ace to work with him, but He'll show her only the boring work. All the tedium and the other things that are so boring, it's impossible to romanticize any of them. This will discourage Daisy Ace from pursuing her dream for now. Her parents like this idea. Will the uncle's plans work, though? Will Daisy Ace sneak off at any time and make trouble? If she does, what's her uncle going to do? Xena Ray is a retired gunfighter, ready to die on the field of battle. Chevy the Kid is out to solve her family's murder. And Daisy Ace is going to learn a boring lesson or two from her uncle. How exactly will our protagonists meet each other? Will they hinder or help each other in their missions? The answers will be in the Berta Trail animated series. If you're going to donate to any of these projects, best to donate to BG, because BG is a more efficient creative project than the others, as fun as the other creative projects are. As soon as the animated kids feature film BG is successful, that success can lead to Berta Trail and onward. Otherwise, you have the option to donate money to any of these creative projects. This is important to remember. My animation production company is Canadian owned and operated. I was born and raised in Canada. I plan to do all of the animation in-house. This means Canadian artists will be hired, Canadian animators will be hired, Canadian voice actors and musicians will be hired. In this country, there are animation veterans and greenhorns looking for work. My animation production company is that opportunity for them. Not to mention people want new animated content. Now for the adult animations. In 1980, we were given 9 to 5. In 1996, we were given the First Wives Club. In the 2020s, I want to give Dinosaurs for Tea. Dinosaurs for Tea is about Mrs. Candy Green, Mrs. Nutmeg Brown, and Mrs. Callista Black. Mrs. Green, Mrs. Brown, and Mrs. Black are three married women who make the earth-shattering discovery that their husbands are autogynephiles. That explains a few things, such as why the husbands are wearing women's lingerie and makeup, why the husbands hold their hands out like this when they shake hands, why their husbands are taking estrogen to grow breasts, as well as why the wives are left to do more than just the women's work around the house. Cleaning the house, cooking the meals, and raising the kids. The wives are left to do the men's work around the house, paying the utility bills, changing the light bulbs, checking the car, taking out the garbage. The married life that each of these women dreamed of is falling apart because their husbands are focusing on their fetishes rather than being good husbands and fathers. Mrs. Green, Mrs. Brown, and Mrs. Black have two choices. 1. Learn to cope with this change in their marriages. 2. Divorce and take the kids with them. But will Mr. Green, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Black let them get away with this? Will the husbands use emotional blackmail to make their wives give up on divorcing them? Will the husbands use various types of abuse to threaten their wives to stay with them? Even if Mrs. Green, Mrs. Brown, and Mrs. Black escape their terrible husbands, what then? Dinosaurs for Tea is going to look like an anime. The reason why is because many men who call themselves trans women, trans girls, transbians, etc. often say that anime made them trans. That is incredibly stupid because anime, Japanese animation, is used solely to entertain, to make art, and to make money. Anime is not supposed to make men think their women are underage girls. Dinosaurs for Tea is an adult anime about three women discovering that their husbands are autogynephiles. IGOP is an adult animated series about an ambitious little fool named Kano Tolly. During his last days in school, an all-boys school, Kano makes three friends, Jade, Carson, and Nick. The relationship between Kano and Jade is, an architect's dream is an engineer's nightmare. Kano is ambitious. He's a dreamer. He thinks he can get an A plus, 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 plus on his next assignment. Jade hates working with Kano. Jade explains that they can finish the assignments this way because that's what the teachers are asking for. They want the students to prove they're learning. Kano, on the other hand, wants to prove he's excelling. Carson wonders about instincts and thinking. He's heard of various gender stereotypes associated with instincts and thinking, such as men usually say that they listen to their gut, whereas women call it women's intuition. Carson's heard that thinking is a manly thing to do because all that thinking led to making great inventions. Basically, Carson wants to know more about instincts and thinking, and how much they change when things like masculine and feminine are applied to them. Maybe there's no change. Maybe there's a lot of change. Regardless, Kano wants to join Carson on his journey of discovery. Lastly is Nick. Nick is the strong, silent, stoic type. Nick's introversion scares Kano because Kano is an extrovert. Many stories are about the extrovert getting the introvert to break out of their shell and become a social butterfly. Finally, a story where the introvert tells the extrovert to be quiet and learn to handle being alone with their thoughts. IGOP is an adult animated series about Kano and his three manly Dubrode friends finishing school and becoming men as they begin their adult lives.
Not to be like overly dramatic or anything, can we just start stabbing transphobes at this point? Like, we have such a big problem of transphobic people being fucking idiots and not getting their shit kicked in. Can we just start kicking their shit in? It would be so much easier for everyone. The entire world would be so much better if we could just stab a transphobe. Say something transphobic, you get stabbed. The world would be beautiful.
There are times when I take a rather dark turn of mind and I think, you know what? Why don't we just let him have it? All of the turfs, insane people, and transphobes. We all retire. We go someplace and we just kind of sit back and watch what these people do to each other. And we take our kids, we take our, husbands and wives and pets and all that. And somehow or another, wherever we go, we're able to earn a nice living. So we're able to be reasonably comfortable as we watch the snowfall and then get dispatches from Transland. How long you think they'd last?
As fascinating as it would be to do that for real, I'm settling for making an animated series out of it. You know the old saying, show, don't tell? I might as well show why anyone would want to leave the trans and TRA peeps. Some might disagree and say, no, we don't want to go through all that again. All the hypocrisy and the double standards. They demand kindness from us. They demand complacency from us. While they release the hounds of death threats and rape threats towards women. Those peeps went as far as killing men. And for what? The trans peeps go after women on a frequent basis because many of those trans peeps are predatory men who target women because they're women. But then why do those men target other men? Because their victims are men? Or because they think they can get away with targeting other men because they're cloaked in the trans flag? This story is called Anal. No one is going to find out what that acronym means until the series streams. Anal is an adult animated series answering the question of what would happen if the trans people and their allies were left alone to their own devices. I cannot believe they paid me to do this. It feels more like a bribe. Then again, they didn't give me that much money, and they didn't tell me how to advertise their project. If my previous pitches and my hat offended you, you'll be happy to know that someone calls me their counterpart because they have crowdfunding campaigns for their animated projects. I told them that when it comes to entertainment, people of that type take warm seats and they mangle a creative project. People of that type don't support anyone building a project from the ground up. They already paid me to work on a few character sheets for them. I don't know if they're going to use my work or not. It was frustrating making the character sheets for them because they did not tell me what they wanted. No details. They just told me to draw a bunch of lesbians from that role-playing book. I doubt they've read the book. I only read that book because of my morbid curiosity, but that's another story. So if you want an ally or a pro-trans creator, whatever you'd call them, consider contributing to their crowdfunding campaign. A cartoon about sword-fighting lesbians, I think. Like I said, I only know of the character sheets they paid me to draw. Show this counterpart what for by supporting this person and their rainbow sword-fighting lesbian cartoon. I hope you're happy.